Welcome everybody to this Lammas and Lionsgate webinar here at the beginning of August. It's actually August the 6th today, for anybody who is watching the recording. So first of all, what I would like you to do is in the chat, write a 1 if you type 1 if you're just wondering what is going on. You're just like, what's happening out there? Type a 2 in the chat if you'd like to know how best to ride what's going on. I call it riding because it feels like a journey, it feels like that we're on this sort of wave of journey going on, and that we don't feel like that we've been trained how to ride this journey. So type a 2 in the chat if you'd really like to know how best to ride what's actually going on. You're in the right place to find out. So what I'm seeing is that people are very overwhelmed, whether that's emotionally or physically. It's like there's just too much going on. It's like people seem to be struggling to cope. And what that often results in is people living on stress hormones in order to keep going. So I'm thinking things like adrenaline and cortisol. And maybe, you're experiencing that you're just questioning everything and everyone. Whereas in the past, we sort of felt that we could believe what we were being told, that we could rely on it. But now it's like, it's just unexpected. There's just, oh, another thing, oh, another thing. Oh, it's just all so unexpected. And this sense that, can we really rely on anybody? Can we really trust what we're actually being told? And if you have been feeling those things, then possibly you've been feeling quite lost. And particularly one of the things that I'm noticing is that um, a lot of people can't even remember what it was like before we went into lockdown, or even who they were, or what they were what they felt like, or what they were experiencing. And I think it's left a lot of people feeling very discombobulated, like just don't really know even who they are, let alone what's going on. And potentially, if you've been feeling like that, that can be quite frightening. And, what does the future actually hold? It can all feel a bit scary. But by understanding, I believe that by understanding what I call the wisdom of the stars, so that's the astrology, the patterns that the planets make with each other in the skies, that we can start to get a grasp on what is actually going on, that we can begin to understand what's going on, and that we can start to see it in a context, that it becomes part of it, like an unfolding pattern. And when we start to be able to see that pattern, it means that we can relax a little bit and we can just allow it to happen. And when we start to do that, it's like we can let go a little bit. We can let go of some of the tension. We can find a bit of relief, a bit of relaxation, and even enjoy it and have some fun, actually enjoy the ride. But in order to be able to do that, we need to be able to ask the best questions and to the universe. We need to be able to actually ask, what is going on, and how can I line myself to what is going on, and how can I be of the best service with all this, complex energies and chaos that seems to be going on around us. And when we have a better idea of what is being asked of us, then we can start to understand how we are actually being trained and prepared, and how we can then to start to see how we are growing and evolving. And I believe that being able to understand astrology gives us a very quick way into being able to see these patterns, to understand why we're here and what we're supposed to be doing, and to understand how we're being trained and how we're being prepared. Now, astrology, it's the oldest science. It's what the ancient, very, very, very first peoples lying by their fires, looking up at the stars and making stories from the patterns that they could see in the skies. And they would follow the movement of the stars. And what they noticed was a lot of them were fixed, but within that, a lot of them moved. And the Greeks then called those the planets because it means the wanderers. And they started to see that these wandering planets would occasionally line up with each other, or they'd form angles to each other, and that this seemed to coincide with what was going on Earth, or actually within themselves. However, astrology has really evolved. Certainly in Plato's time, only, the kings and queens or whatever would get a chart done, because it took that long to actually be able to measure where everything was in the sky and to draw a chart. And often it would be very much about the malefics, the bad planets, and what portents, what bad portents might be coming up, or when would be the best time to have a battle or get married, or things like that. But now astrology has really evolved, and I see it now as a way of describing metaphysical theories and ideas. So spiritual ideas and theories. And we're also starting to blend astrology with quantum physics, so that we're starting to get a more what we call quantum understanding of astrology. And what this has really only come about in the last few decades, because up until Einstein, everything was about Newtonian physics. It was all very material, very physical. It was all cause and effect, and the apple fell from the tree, and would hit the ground. Whereas now, what with quantum physics, we're starting to understand astrology in a very different way, and how we can interpret astrology in a much more holistic way, that we have a lot more options, that it's not so deterministic. Oh, this is definitely going to happen. It's like, no, we're a co-creative force, and we have a choice as to how we use the planetary energies and how we work with them. And, I don't know if you've ever heard of light language. It's a big thing at the moment. But in a way, astrology is a light language. The stars are lights, aren't they? And they're conveying that, when we look at the patterns and the design, the geometric patterns that they form, it is a language, in the same way that mathematics is a language, and we look at the geometry in mathematics. So personally, I think that astrology is more important now than ever. Partly, everything is changing so fast. For example, technology, and we're really struggling to keep up. Um, we've been struggling for quite a while now, but the last 4 years, apparently, technology, um, it sort of developed as in the last over those 3 years of lockdown, it developed as much as what was predicted to have developed in 14 years. So the rate of change that we're going through is massive. And it's no wonder we're all going, oh, I can't cope with this, because our physical body are quite slow to change. If you think about it, our cells take 7 years to change. So, we're quite slow at adapting to things, and particularly if we don't actually know what's going on. And astrology is a brilliant way of understanding what is going on, what is changing, and how to work with those changes. And particularly as well, since quantum physics, we now understand that everything is one energy. Now, this is something that is really quite new to even now, even though we've had quantum physics for nearly 100 years. I was talking to a very renowned astrologer recently, but she's well in her 80s. And when I started talking about quantum physics and astrology, she just looked at me blank. I was surprised. Well, I was really surprised. And so, we're starting to understand that because everything is one energy, that if something happens here on one side of the planet, it's going to affect something on the other side of the planet. Somebody was telling me the other day about, this experiment where they trained some chimps to do something. I can't remember what it was. And those chimps, what they discovered was some chimps in another place who had never had contact were picking up the same skill, because we're so interconnected with everything, with each other, and with the whole of the universe. And then, of course, another reason is that we seem to be going through a massive spiritual awakening. I know that everybody here, I know that you have all been going through a spiritual awakening, whether it's happened in the last few months, whether it happened at the beginning of lockdown or during lockdown, or whether it happened decades ago. We're all in this process of waking up. And you know, and it all started, of course, with this, this rise, this growth in doing personal development and personal growth. And now people are like starting to understand that actually this is about spiritual growth. So if you haven't come across me before, I've been a practicing astrologer for over 35 years. I've taught astrology for 35 years. I particularly like doing it face to face, in workshops. I like getting people wearing hats. If you ever saw one of my astrology talks that I did last year, it was all about every planet had a hat. This was my sun hat. And I'm also now teaching online courses, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about that in a moment. But the other thing that I am really, really interested in doing is astro dramas, where people who know no astrology whatsoever get everybody in a hat, acting out a planet, and just what comes out of our mouths. Remember, we're all one energy, so we're all connected to the stars, and sometimes we just have to step out of ourselves, put a hat on, get into a different personality, and things come out of our mouths, and we think, whoa, where did that come from? Because we're channeling directly. So I love doing that sort of teaching as well. But I'm particularly known in the field for being a spiritual astrologer. And most astrologers do have some form of specialism within astrology. And mine is what's called the age clock or the life clock. It's a very, very simple tool can teach it in a few minutes, but we're not looking at that today. And I'm also known because this astrology course that I'm teaching is completely different to anything else that is on the market. It's so short, and okay, people might hesitate to say it's simple, but it is only 10 short lessons. And I don't know why I am still sharing this on the screen, because that was not my intention, but never mind. Yes, my new astrology course takes you from knowing absolutely nothing to having everything you need to know to read a birth chart in 10 lessons. So I just want to say this for a few moments, give you a few moments about this. If I can get on to the next slide. There we go. So it's 10 lessons. They're about 20 to 30 minutes each. And previously, it was just one option. It was one package. But I have now changed that. So there's now 3 different packages. So first of all, you're all waiting, dying to know what this webinar is going to be about. So we're going to cover 3 things. We're going to cover Lammas, which, although traditionally celebrated on August the 1st, it's actually the halfway point between the summer solstice and the autumn equinox, and the official astrological halfway point is tomorrow, the 7th of August. Then we're also going to look at the Lion's Gate portal, which the peak of which is on the following day, August the 8th, although it's sort of open for a couple of weeks, so it's been like around open already for a week or so. And then we're going to look at another portal, which I called the 2024 to 29 portal. And I'm going to do this through demonstrating 3 astrology skills, which astrologers will use. Not all of them will use all of them. So one is historical research, because using computers and things, we can draw up a chart for any day from the past hundreds, thousands of years. We can access a chart, and we can actually draw up charts over a long period of time and find patterns. And we can look at, well, what was happening on then, and what did the chart look like when that was going on? And so we can see these recurring cycles and patterns by studying history. The other skill is about intuition and visualization, being able to use our intuition and to be able to see pictures and patterns in the chart. And then finally, it's about spiritual research. And by this, I mean living the chart. So a lot of you know that I do a daily astrology tip. I'm going to give you the QR code at the end if you want to follow my daily tips. They're free. And by studying the chart every single day, it's almost like I'm aligning myself with the movement, with the unfolding, and I'm sort of like looking what's happening, how is that resulting, how is this resulting, and then starting to grow and understand more spiritually. So we're going to start with the historical research in order to look at Lammas. But first of all, I just want you to remind you of our solar system. So obviously we have the sun in the center, and then the planets are at different distances from the sun. So the Mercury is the closest, then we have Venus, then Mars, and then Jupiter, Saturn, and then we have Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Now, up until the mid 18th century, we didn't know about Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto because we can't see them with the naked eye. It was only when telescopes were invented that we were able to actually see them. So the personal planets are what we call the Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. So we can see those with the naked eye. The Moon takes 28 days to go around the Sun. The Saturn takes about 30 years. And we can use these planets, like we can use them like tools. We can use them to help us to achieve what it is that we want to achieve. But the spiritual planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, and there are now more beyond. Since 2020, they've discovered a whole other belt called the Kuiper Belt, where there's a lot more planets, very, very long orbits around the sun. And Uranus, Neptune, and everything Uranus and beyond is invisible to our naked eye. And these three have orbits between 80 and 250 years. And I like to see them as sort of like gods, if you like, and they are in control. Now, that doesn't mean to say that we don't have a choice, because we always have a choice as to how we work with them, but we can't make them work for us in the way that we could with the personal planets. So Uranus has an orbit of 84 years, Neptune 165, Pluto 250. That's around the sun. So you can see they're very slow. They take a long time. And their properties, Uranus, a key phrase might be universal intelligence, Neptune about universal love, and Pluto is about universal will. And the keywords, these are my own keywords. Other people might use different ones. But for Uranus, creativity, Neptune is about unity, it's about oneness, and Pluto is about power. Now, whether that is abusive type power or power over somebody, or whether that is empowering and aligning ourselves with the power of the universe, that's our choice. Now, this diagram shows the planets in alignment with each other. So you've got like this, you've got one planet there, another one behind it, another one, like that. But that's actually quite rare, particularly for the outer planets. However, there was, well, at least there's been a few, but Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto did align with each other in 576 BC. That was the last time that they actually aligned with each other. Remember, they're all moving very slowly. So for them all to be moving so slowly and then to suddenly all come into an alignment with each other is a pretty rare event. And it's known that there was like a worldwide awakening at that time. In fact, Buddha called it the Wheel of Truth, and Plato likened it to human beings leaving the cave, where it was no longer about just survival. It was about exploration and pushing boundaries and developing their own power. The next alignment is not until 3,370. So not many of us are going to actually see that. But within that 4,000-year cycle, so this is an historical cycle of 4,000 years where we've got these three gods lining up with each other, there are many other cycles involving those three planets. And we're going to have a little look at some of those. So First of all, you need to understand that as all the planets are going around, now they're going around the sun, but of course we see them going around the Earth. So this big green circle in the middle represents the Earth. And so they're all going around at different speeds. Some of them are going quite quickly and others are really slowly. So they're all in different places. And as they, at any moment in time, because they're moving all the time, it's never stationary. So, but if you take a moment in time, like the moment that you were born, the planets will be forming different angles to each other. So sometimes they'll be bang opposite each other, or they might be at a right angle to each other, 90 degrees, or they might be at 120 degrees to each other, or 60 degrees to each other. And basically all these angles, well, all the angles that I use, other astrologers use different angles. Honestly, there is just so much in astrology. I think there's something like 3,000 techniques. And I certainly only use a small proportion of those. But all the angles that I used are based on multiples of 30 degrees. So besides these, there is also a 30-degree angle and a 150-degree angle. Have I written something there? I can't see it. Yeah. So we don't tend to draw these angles with these white lines into the center. We draw them with colored lines joining up the planets. So the red ones are 90 degrees, the blue, short blue is 60, a long blue is 120, and the 30 and 150 degrees are usually green. And, you know, you've got 10 planets, so they can all be interrelating with quite a few other planets in the sky. And you end up with these geometric patterns. I don't know if you've ever come across sacred geometry, but there's definitely a similarity here. Or in the symmetry of crystallization that you get in crystals. And there's a similarity there as well in terms of these arrangements that the planets make with each other, a bit like atoms or molecules in a crystal. So, but we're going to particularly look at the geometric patterns created by what I call the three spiritual planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And from 1942 to 2038, so these patterns tend to happen between Pluto and Neptune. They tend to happen in 80-year cycles. Now, Pluto and Neptune are the two slowest moving. And because of the shape of their orbit, so they don't all go round. They don't just go round. A lot of them are elliptical. And so for Pluto particularly, it can go very slowly in part, I can't remember which bit now, but it can go very slowly in part of the ellipse and then very quickly in other parts of the ellipse. And for the past, this last century, Pluto and Neptune's orbits, although they're normally 148 and 250, they've actually been keeping aligned with each other because Pluto is in the fast bit of its orbit. And they have been, since 42 to 38, they have been in one of these 60-degree angles to each other. Prior to 1920, we had an 80-year pattern of them being at 30 degrees apart. And from 2061, they're going to be 90 degrees apart. So you can see it's like these waves of historical patterns are going on. And if you do your research, you can see how this dance of Pluto and Neptune's geometric relationships is you can see it being acted out on the Earth, because these two are so powerful in their effect upon us, but very different. So Pluto is very forceful, it's about will, it's about power. And Neptune is much softer. It's about love and unity. And it's about idealism and the imagination. So you can imagine when these two are working together, this is a very strange combination. If you look up this guy, Polden Jenkins, his website, polden.co.uk, he goes into this in quite a lot of depth. So, Lammas. Lammas, or sometimes called Lugnasa, as I said, is the midway point between the summer solstice and the autumn equinox. So sometime we celebrate it. Well, some people celebrate on the 1st. I tend to celebrate it actually on the astrological point, which will be tomorrow. And it symbolizes the first harvest. So I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of harvesting's already going on, and you get the first fruit, you've got first blackberries, you've got, peas and the first vegetables coming through. And Lugh, he was an Irish Celtic god of the sun and the light. And it's a bit interesting that I've actually chosen Llandrindod Dodwells to run this webinar, because I'm just up the road from Leinster and the River Lugh. And of course, Leinster's got Leo in it, and we are in the Leo season. So a bit of a serendipity going on there. So this is what I call the star map, or the chart for tomorrow. Now, actually, the astrological point of Lammas tomorrow is something like 1 o'clock in the morning, but I've chosen just after 8 o'clock because I wanted to have all the same times for the 3 charts that we're looking at, to keep them in roughly the same orientation. It really doesn't matter that much. This is mainly to make it easier for you guys. And I want you to see this 60-degree aspect, this 60-degree relationship between the planet Pluto, which is represented by a letter P, and Neptune, which is represented by a sort of trident. And if you remember, we are living with this relationship, with this communication going on between these two, between 1942 and 2028. Now, it's not exact all the time. In fact, sometimes they go backwards and they go forwards, and one will go a bit faster, and then one will be going forwards and one will be going backwards. And so sometimes they come into a tight relationship, and sometimes they drift apart again, but then they will come back again. And so they're doing this drifting in and out of this 60-degree relationship for this roughly 80-year period. Now, what I want you to notice is that from this, what we call it an aspect, there are 2 long green lines resulting here. And hopefully you've got that shown better on the next slide. There you go. Now, these are 150-degree relationships, and they're pointing to Venus and Mercury, which are now just into Virgo. And Virgo is the sign of the harvest. And Venus is about everything we love and desire, and Mercury is about how we communicate. So this is all about looking at what we are harvesting, whether that's physically, whether we're out in our garden harvesting, or whether we're looking at what we are harvesting from the seeds that we set in the spring, either at the spring equinox or at Beltane at the beginning of May. It's like all those resolutions and wishes that we made earlier in the year, all those plans that we had, how are they now coming to fruition? And how can we relate them to these gods, to the energy of these gods, to the direction, to the overarching um, direction, tuition, leadership, guidance that we have been given. So this is what we're doing now in Lammas. And I've just drawn it here a bit more schematically. This actual shape with the two long greens and the short blue is called a yod, or a finger of God, or a finger of fate. And it's pointing at the Venus Mercury. What are you communicating? What are we communicating? And because it's Venus, it wants to be, it's all about love. You know, Venus is the goddess of love. And so we want to be communicating joyful things. We want to be celebrating. We want to be giving thanks. It's harvest time. So if you find yourself going, I can't bear it, this is awful, can't bear it, then that is not very Venusian. And remember that whatever comes out our own energy, butterfly effect, is going to be impacting the whole everything. So Uranus, Neptune and Pluto are saying, what power are you using in your communication about what you are harvesting now, what you are celebrating, what gratitude that you have for what you are receiving. That's where we want to be focused now for this Lammas. So now we're going to look about the Lion's Gate portal. And we're going to use the skills of visualization and intuition. Now, a portal, what is a portal? It's a gateway. A doorway is a portal. You go from one state into another state. You go from one room into another room. And I love working with portals, because they're an opportunity to stand at the threshold and say, I am going to deliberately choose to change my state, to change from maybe a grumpy mood I'm in here. I'm going to step through this portal and I am going to celebrate and be grateful on the other side of this portal. So they're like an opening for a spiritual transformation. This was Hafoz Gate, which I passed through a few days ago. It's in the mid Wales. It's 200 years old. I thought it was a great portal. So the Lion's Gate portal happens on, well, we always celebrate it on the 8th of August. And this year is particularly significant because the numbers of the year 2024 add up to 8 as well. And basically it represents an alignment of the Earth, our sun, the Orion constellation, and the star Sirius. Now, in some models of belief, Sirius is known to be the greater sun, whereas so ours is our little small personal sun, and Sirius is the great sun, the sun. And although the Egyptians didn't use our calendar, it wouldn't have been the 8th of August for them. This time of year corresponded to what they called their new year. And it was when the rains came, it was when the Nile flooded, and they knew that they would be able to plant their crops. They knew that their fields would be refertilized. And so it's always been known, even by ancient Egyptians, as a time of transformation. And we now know of it as a time of collective evolution. And it a lot of people, say it's a brilliant time to manifest your dreams, although it's dead on the center of the portal, if you like, is on the 8th of the 8th. It actually, the window is about a couple of weeks, so it's already been open for a week or so. And here is the chart for the 8th of the 8th, and I've done it for 0808, so it's all eights. And we've still got our 60 degrees here between Pluto and Neptune, but the Yod has gone. There's still a green aspect here to Mercury, Venus, but it doesn't go to Neptune anymore, although the one to Pluto still exists. So here we're just looking at that Neptune to Pluto communication that's going on. But can you see a portal? Can you actually see a shape? I was really surprised when I saw this chart. I thought, my goodness, it's got a portal in the middle of it. And just in case you can't, oops, but before I get there, forgot this bit. The other thing that is new, and this only got set up last Monday, so 8 days ago, Uranus moved in to a 120-degree relationship to Pluto. Now, as soon as I saw this, I was like, dum, 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 dum. Is Uranus going to join up with Neptune? And the three of them form their own little relationship. And this was what really prompted me to get into the historical research. When I looked at these charts, I looked ahead. I don't look ahead that often. And I looked at this chart and I thought, oh, this is pretty major. But before we go to that bit, just wanted to see, can you see this portal? That Uranus-Pluto has been joined by the moon. Remember, the moon moves very quickly, so this is only happening for a few hours around 8 o'clock in the morning in 2 days' time. But it creates this beautiful blue triangle. And I think that really does look like a portal. So you can see that sometimes when you look at a chart, something just stands out and you just go, whoa, I'm talking about portals, and there's a portal right there in the middle of the chart. And then that then led me into, all sorts of deep dives. So I've done it again here more schematically so you can see it more clearly. And will Uranus and Neptune form that bridge? Well, obviously they will. But before we go there, just want to tell you a little bit more about my course. So you've got 3 options now. It used to be that everything was included in the course. But I realize that some people might not want the group coaching calls, or they might not need the chart reading. They just want the lessons. They just want the information. So literally everything I use to read a chart, I teach in 10, 20 to 30-minute lessons. Then you have the option of your own chart reading, where I go through every single technique that I taught you in those lessons in your own chart, so you can see how it all pulls together. And that takes about 90 minutes. And then there's also the option of a group coaching call for about an hour every 2 weeks, which gives people the option to ask questions and deep dive a bit further. And the current group, we end up looking a lot at individual charts. So the next course will be starting in September, and it will only be at these prices that I'm showing now. As it develops, the prices will be going up. If you're interested or you just want to discuss it, I'd love to chat to people about it, then give me a message and we'll have a call and you can see whether this is something for you. Now, go back to the Lionsgate portal. In exactly 2 weeks, I'm calling this the 2024 to 2029 portal. And this is where my own really particular branch of specialization comes in, what I call spiritual research. So remember, 1942 to 2028, we've got this arrangement going on between Pluto and Neptune. They're 60 degrees apart. But then bring Uranus in. Now, Uranus travels a lot faster than Neptune and Pluto, so it's going round while they're painstakingly moving. It's going whizzing around in its own time. And as it does so, it's also making relationships with Pluto and Neptune. Now, in the mid-60s, it was exactly in alignment with Pluto. Now, Uranus is all about change. And it's about revolution. It's about freedom. It's about eccentricity. It's about breaking through boundaries. It's about exploration. It's Einstein. It's energy. It's electricity. And in the mid-60s, when Uranus landed on Pluto, that was when we had the Vietnam War, we had CND, we had the hippies, we had the psychedelic drug revolution, we had rock and roll, psychedelic music. It was like this massive evolutionary change, this huge spiritual awakening that went on in the mid to late 60s. And Uranus went round and round. And then in the early 90s, it aligned with Neptune. Now, I have a son who was born with this. And I was very interested, all his friends, and it was like their dreams. Neptune's very much about dreams. And Uranus is about breaking through boundaries and new and revolution and blah, blah, blah. And the dreams of these young people, that they wanted to go so much further. They wanted to be so much bigger, especially richer, than their parents and previous generations. And then, but also, Uranus has been making the smaller aspects. So the 30 degrees here was in the mid-50s. There was then there was an in-between phase in the late 70s, and then there was a 30 degrees towards Neptune between 2006 and 2015. So anybody born in these ages has this, or possibly, because they, as I said, they all go in and out and in and out. It's like breathing. It's like you breathe in and they all come together, and then you breathe out and they move apart a little bit, and then they breathe in and they come back together, and then you breathe out. So it's a little bit like that. But a lot of these people were born with these 3 spiritual planets working together. Useful to have a look at your own chart if you were born during any of those periods. And they were all periods of growth, change, and conflict. Now, I particularly want to look at these, though. So in the mid-40s, this was the arrangement that they were making. So we had, so there's the Earth, and we had Uranus up here, Neptune down there, and they were by 120 degrees. And then at 60 degrees to each of those was Pluto. Now, when we get a little triangle like this, it's almost like the energy is directed to the apex of the triangle. Now, Pluto is about power. It's about will, and it can be about power over. And if you think about it, the mid-40s was the end of World War II, and it was the only time that nuclear weapons have been used in warfare. It was the end of fascism. It was very much to do with this battle of power that was going on, and where did the power lie? And then of course we had all the stuff around the Russians, and and suddenly everybody was afraid of the Cold War and the Russians, and so this very dominating Plutonic influence that was going on. Pluto was discovered in the 1930s at the same time as they split the atom, and we had, as human beings, as a race, as a species, as a planet, as we'd never known power like this. We'd never had power over other people or even over the planet like we did once we split the atom. But starting in 2 weeks' time, this is the triangle that we have where Neptune is on the apex. And Neptune is about universal love. It's about idealism. It's about oneness. It's about unity. It's about where we recognize that we're all connected, that we're all part of one energy. And this is going to carry on through until almost the end of this decade. Again, in and out, in and out. Sometimes it will be tight as a threesome, and then sometimes it will fall apart and they won't be in contact with each other at all. But then it'll come back again because they're always going forward and then backwards and forwards and backwards. And they're not really going forwards and backwards. It's just that when we see them from the Earth, they look like they're going forwards and backwards. They're not really. And I have described how retrograde motion works in other videos, so I'm not going to do that now. So let's have a look at this star map for the 26th of August when this triangle kicks in. And we've got the yod again, but this time it's going to the sun in Virgo. That's the essence of who we are. That's how we think. And so we still need to be celebrating, we still want to be enjoying the fruits of our labor. Remember, this is what we had at Lammas. And we still have this big portal, this big blue portal. But instead of the moon being at this corner, we now have Venus. This is all about what we love. We're really being asked to focus more on what we love and not what we don't want, because the more we think about what we don't want, the more we're likely to manifest it. So we want to be thinking about what we love. And this is called a grand trine, these big blue triangles. They're easy, they're flowing. And this is what we had at the Lion's Gate. And this time, remember, we had the moon here before. Now we had the moon joining Uranus, which gives it a little bit of extra welly on the Uranus. But that's only just for a few hours. The moon moves very quickly. Whereas this particular triangle will hang around for quite a few days, maybe even a week. Venus moves reasonably quickly, but would normally stay within that relationship for about a week. And then we have Uranus and Neptune join up, and we end up with this small blue triangle, the likes of which we haven't seen since the mid-40s. But now we have Neptune on the apex. This is such a different energy. This is such a different focus. But the downside of Neptune is delusion. and feeling very lost. Neptune is the ocean. We can either see it as one drop of rain in the ocean and everything is connected and everything is oneness, or we can see us floating about in the middle of the ocean and we have no idea where the shore is. We're just completely lost. And my feeling is that the more we focus on this Venus, the more we and the sun, the more we focus on the gratitude and the celebration and just enjoying everything that is good in our lives and really giving that some energy, then that's what Neptune and Pluto and Uranus want. You know, the gods, they don't want us to fail. The reason that they might give us a hard time because we've gone to sleep and they're like, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. And so you have an accident or something terrible happens, or you just feel terrible. I feel really lost. I don't know what's going on. And it's the gods say, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. And then you go, oh, okay, I'll just focus on what's good. I'll just focus on what I want, on everything that is good in my life, everything that I enjoy, and the gratitude. So this is a long spell, 2024 to 2029, that we have. And of course, all sorts of things are going to go on here. It's not all going to be focused on the Venus or the sun. That's literally just the initial impulse that is setting us off with this particular arrangement of the gods. And, you know, I got lots of people saying, you know, what they would like me to talk about in this webinar. And one person asked me how to overcome separation. And if it's when we start saying, well, that's bad, and I don't want to be connected with that. So then we start to create this separation. And then someone asked me to talk about the rise of the divine feminine. And certainly Virgo is a feminine sign. And obviously nature is a feminine energy, if you like. And Uranus is a feminine energy. But for me, it as soon as I start talking about raising of the divine feminine, then immediately for me it's back into separation again. For me, this is more about raising of the divine human. You know, that we are all divine beings. The chances of being here is absolutely minuscule. I think you've got to throw, you know, like a double six, you know, 6 times or whatever, I don't know, 1,000,000 times, you know, for the chance of each of us being here. We each have such an important role to play in this evolutionary process that we are going through, and which these 3 gods are playing their part. They're the ones who are going, okay, so now we're going to introduce this clunk. Let's see how they all get on with that. And for me, this, I think about this spiritual research is that when I see this, I go, okay, what do I need to do? How do I need to live this? What does it mean? How can I best translate it into physical material reality? And it's very weird, but it's a bit like how am I going to give this webinar from, you know, when I don't have a laptop, but when I'm on holiday in my van and the last 3 days I've not even had any signal? How am I going to give this webinar? How am I going to give this webinar? Oh yes, the book an Airbnb. And you know, it's this strange thing that we just say how or why or what or where. Just ask. You ask the gods, and they're working together over the next 4 years. And so they're wanting us to work with them in this relationship. And if you saw my talk that I did last winter, you know, it was all about the fact that we are moving from this one experience of very physical, emotional, that we're very trapped in our bodies and in our feelings, and we're transitioning into a more spiritual, to more spiritual beings. It's almost like our energy is being boosted. It's not so slow like in earth, it's much faster. We're transitioning from earth and water into fire and air, which is fast, very, very fast. I mean, if you think things have been fast now, it's going to be nothing compared to what it's going to be like from 2026 onwards. And so we've got this overarching union of the spiritual planets happening. And the best advice I can give you is just to ask. Don't try and think it, because if you think it, you're just going to get whatever you thought about before. You're only going to get what you already know. You have to ask, what's new? What do I need to understand in order to work with this? So just a recap. We got these true triangles going on. In the 40s, we had Pluto, all about power, and particularly power over, as the apex. And now we have Neptune. Yeah, so Neptune was discovered in the late 19th century, and at that time it was very much about spiritualism. It was about the Golden Dawn. It was about romanticism, the artist period. There was an explosion in psychotherapy with Jung and Freud. What's going to happen now? You know, what's the late 2020s going to be known for? That's up to us. That's up to how we are going to translate this energy into our daily lives. Now, if you're not a member of the Starlight Lounge already and you would like to get my daily tip, it's a WhatsApp group, and I post my daily tip in there every day. It's in Facebook as well, and it's in loads of places, but the easiest place to find it is in the WhatsApp group, because obviously that just pings every day, whereas it's very hard to find anything in Facebook anymore. And if you would like to join, I am going to give you a QR code just after this slide. But first of all, I would like to say thank you very, very much for joining me and for watching today. And here is the QR code if you are not already part of the WhatsApp group. So I'm going to just leave that for a couple of minutes so you can get your phone up and scan it if you need to. And then I am going to stop the sharing and open up to questions.